Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back and welcome home to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, taking us to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna through the first 9 cantos of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. We have a full room again. What's to do? It's getting better and better every day here in Houston. Shri Radha Nila Madhava are working their miracles. Rasika Shiromani has come from Denver. Hare Krishna, welcome. Haribo. And let's hear the prayer of Sanatana Goswami to the Srimad Bhagavatam. It goes like this. Sarva Shastra Dipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarvalokaika Drikprada, O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidwando Ditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshak Shadayate, Sarvadas Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. You, every syllable, pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhika Bando Matsangin, Madguro Man Mahadana, Mandistadaga Madbhagya, Mad Anandanamostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy. I bow down to you. Hari Balam just walked in. Dr. Hari Balam. That's why I was making fun. Here, your chair is waiting for you over here. No, you have to come over here. You can do it. I know you can do it. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Carter. Hari Bo. This is your chair. Here. Yes, please. This is the doctor's chair. Make sure you stay honest. Make sure these things spread out, yeah. Okay? Hare Krishna. It's nice to see you again. Haribol. Asadu saduta dayin atinit chotatakara anamun chigadachin mam premna rit katayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we're in a heavy section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The big sacrifice has just been done, and Lord Abdaksha has insulted Lord Shiva, and now the followers of Daksha and the followers of Lord Shiva are blaspheming each other, and it's better not to go to the heavenly planets. Because wherever you go, this is happening in the material world. Okay, now, Lord Shiva, you remember, he stayed cool. He didn't get upset. He didn't get involved in the polemics. He just left. Cool as a cucumber, as they say. And now we've arrived at chapter 3 of the 4th canto, talks between Lord Shiva and Sati. Text 1. Maitreya continued. In this manner, the tension between the father-in-law and son-in-law, Daksha and Lord Shiva, continued for a considerably long time. Hare Krishna, what's your name?
Alejandra.
Huh?
Alejandra.
Alejandra, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hare Krishna. Purport. The previous chapter has already explained that Vidura questioned the sage Maitreya as to the cause of the misunderstanding between Lord Shiva and Daksha. Another question is why the strife between Daksha and his son-in-law caused Sati to destroy her body. The chief reason for Sati's giving up her body was that her father, Daksha, began another sacrificial performance to which Lord Shiva was not invited at all. Generally, when any sacrifice is performed, although each and every sacrifice is intended to pacify the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, all the demigods, especially Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, and the other principal demigods, such as Indra and Chandra, are invited, and they take part. It is said that unless all the demigods are present, no sacrifice is complete. But in the tension between the father-in-law and son-in-law, Daksha began another yajna performance to which Lord Shiva was not invited. Daksha was the chief progenitor employed by Lord Brahma, and he was a son of Brahma, so he had a high position and was also very proud. So better not to take high positions. Text 2. When Lord Brahma appointed Daksha the chief of all the Prajapatis, the progenitors of population, Daksha became very much puffed up. Purport. Although he was envious and was inimical towards Lord Shiva, Daksha was appointed the chief of all Prajapatis. That was the cause of his excessive pride. When a man becomes too proud of his material possessions, he can perform any disastrous act. And therefore Daksha acted out of false prestige. That is described in this chapter. Text 3. Daksha began a sacrifice named Vajrapeya, and he became excessively confident of his support by Lord Brahma. He then performed another great sacrifice named Brihaspati Sava. Purport. In the Vedas, it is prescribed that before performing a Brihaspati Sava sacrifice, one should perform the sacrifice named Vajrapeya. While performing these sacrifices, however, Daksha neglected great devotees like Lord Shiva. According to the Vedic scriptures, the demigods are eligible to participate in yajnas and share the oblations, but Daksha wanted to avoid them. All sacrifices are intended to pacify Lord Vishnu, but Lord Vishnu includes all his devotees. I'll read that again. This is a very important point for all of us. All sacrifices are intended to pacify Lord Vishnu, but Lord Vishnu includes all his devotees. Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all the other demigods are all obedient servants of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Lord Vishnu is never satisfied without them. But Daksha, being puffed up with his power, wanted to deprive Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva of participation in the sacrifice, understanding that if one satisfies Vishnu, it is not necessary to satisfy his followers. That was his misconception. But that is not the process. Vishnu wants his followers to be satisfied first. Lord Krishna says, Mad Bhakta Pujab Jadika. the worship of my devotees is better than worship of me. Similarly, in the Padma Purana, it is stated that the best mode of worship is to offer oblations to Vishnu. But better than that is to worship devotees of Krishna. Thus, Daksha's determination to neglect Lord Shiva in the sacrifices was not fitting.
And here it says Shiva Purana.
That's a correction. It's Padma Purana. Sometimes those are the kinds of mistakes that need to be corrected in the books. Means the editor, the first editors, made a mistake, and the last editor corrected the mistake and put it back to the way Prabhupada wanted it, and that's the proper quotation. Okay? Text 4. While the sacrifice was being performed, many Brahmarshis, great sages, ancestral demigods, and other demigods, their wives, all very nicely decorated with ornaments, attended from different parts of the universe. Purport. In any auspicious ceremony, such as a marriage ceremony, sacrificial ceremony, or puja ceremony, it is auspicious for married women to decorate themselves very nicely with ornaments, fine clothing, and cosmetics. These are auspicious signs. Many heavenly women assembled with their husbands, the Devarshis, demigods, and Rajarshis, in that great sacrifice named Brihaspati Sava. It is specifically mentioned in this verse that they approached with their husbands, for when a woman is decorated nicely, her husband becomes more cheerful. The nice decorations, ornaments, and dress of the wives of the demigods and sages, and the cheerfulness of the demigods and sages themselves were all auspicious signs for the ceremony. Text 5 to 7. The chaste lady Sati, the daughter of Daksha, heard the heavenly denizens flying in the sky, conversing about the great sacrifice being performed by her father. When she saw that from all directions the beautiful wives of the heavenly denizens, their eyes very beautifully glittering, were near her residence, and were going to the sacrifice, dressed in fine clothing and ornamented with earrings and necklaces and lockets, she approached her husband, the master of the Bhutas, in great anxiety, and spoke as follows. Purport. It appears that the residence of Lord Shiva was not on this planet, but somewhere in outer space. Otherwise, how could Sati have seen the airplanes coming from different directions towards this planet and heard the passengers talking about the great sacrifice being performed by Daksha? The mention of the Upadeva Vara refers to inferior demigods like the Gandharvas, Kinnaras, and Uragas, who were not exactly demigods, but between the demigods and human beings. They were also coming in planes. The word swa-nilabhyashe, swa-nilabyashe, swa-nilabyashe indicates that they were passing right near her residential quarters. The dresses and bodily features of the wives of the heavenly denizens are very nicely described here. Their eyes moved, their earrings and other ornaments glittered and glared. Their dresses were the nicest possible. And all of them had special lockets on their necklaces. Each woman was accompanied by her husband. Thus they looked so beautiful that Sati, Dakshayani, was impelled to dress similarly and go to the sacrifice with her husband. That is the natural inclination of a woman. Text 8. Sati said, "My dear Lord Shiva, your father-in-law is now executing great sacrifices, and all the demigods, having been invited by him, are going there. If you desire, we may go also." Purport. Sati knew of the tension between her father and her husband, and still she expressed to her husband, Lord Shiva, that since such sacrifices were going on in her father's house, and so many demigods were going, She also desired to go, but she could not express her willingness directly. So she told her husband that if he desired to go, then she could also accompany him. In other words, she submitted her desire very politely to her husband. A little different than culture nowadays. Translation. I think that my sisters must have gone to this great sacrificial ceremony with their husbands just to see their relatives. I also desired to decorate myself with the ornaments given to me by my father, and go there with you to participate in that assembly. Purport. It is a woman's nature to want to decorate herself with ornaments and nice dresses and accompany her husband to social functions, meet friends and relatives, and enjoy life in that way. This propensity is not unusual, for woman is the basic principle of material enjoyment. Therefore, in Sanskrit, the word for woman is stri, which means one who expands the field of material enjoyment. In the material world, there is an attraction between woman and man. This is the arrangement of conditional life. A woman attracts a man, and in that way the scope of material activities involving house, wealth, children, and friendship increases, and thus instead of decreasing one's material demands, one becomes entangled in material enjoyment. Lord Shiva, however, is different. Therefore, his name is Shiva. He is not at all attracted by material enjoyment, although his wife Sati was the daughter of a very great leader and was given to him by the request of Brahma. Lord Shiva was reluctant, but Sati, as a woman, the daughter of a king, wanted enjoyment. She wanted to go to her father's house, just as her other sisters might have gone, and meet them and enjoy social life. Here she specifically indicated that she would decorate herself with the ornaments given by her father. She did not say that she would decorate herself with the ornaments given by her husband, because her husband was callous about all such matters. He did not know how to decorate his wife and take part in social life, because he was always in ecstasy with thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the Vedic system, a daughter is given a sufficient dowry at the time of her marriage, and therefore Sati was also given a dowry by her father, and ornaments were included. It is also the custom that the husband gives some ornaments, but here it is particularly mentioned that her husband, being materially almost nothing, could not do so. Therefore, she wanted to decorate herself with the ornaments given by her father. It was fortunate for Sati that Lord Shiva did not take the ornaments from his wife and spend them for ganja, because those who imitate Lord Shiva in smoking ganja exploit everything from household affairs. They take all their wives' property and spend on smoking, intoxication, and other similar activities. Text 10. And life goes on. Text 10. My sisters, my mother's sisters, and their husbands, and other affectionate relatives must be assembled there. So if I go, I shall be able to see them. And I shall be able to see the flapping flags and the performance of the sacrifice by the great sages. For these reasons, my dear husband, I am very anxious to go. Purport. As stated before, the tension between the father-in-law and son-in-law persisted for a considerable time. Sati therefore had not gone to her father's house for a long while. Thus she was very anxious to go to her father's house, particularly because on that occasion her sisters and their husbands and her mother's sisters would be there. As is natural for a woman, she wanted to dress equally to her other sisters, and also be accompanied by her husband. She did not, of course, want to go alone. Text 11. This manifested cosmos is a wonderful creation of the interaction of the three material modes, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord. This truth is fully known to you. Yet I am but a poor woman, and as you know, we have to have a new rule, do we? He's a doctor. How can he turn off his... I thought you always have to a little beeper or something, no?
Yes.
Is that the same form, same one as before? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Christina. Hare Krishna. She'll be okay. Okay, text 11. This manifested cosmos is a wonderful creation of the interaction of the three material modes, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord. This truth is fully known to you. Yet I am but a poor woman, and as you know, I am not conversant with the truth. Therefore, I wish to see my birthplace once more. Purport. Dakshayani, Sati, knew very well that her husband, Lord Shiva, was not very much interested in the glaring manifestation of the material world, which is caused by the interaction of the three modes of nature. Therefore she addressed her husband as Aja, which refers to one who has transcended the bondage of birth and death, or one who has realized his eternal position. She stated, the illusion of accepting the perverted reflection, the material or cosmic manifestation, to be real is not present in you, because you are self-realized. For you, the attraction of social life and the consideration that someone is father, someone is mother, and someone is sister, which are illusory relationships, is already over. But because I am a poor woman, I am not so advanced in transcendental realization. Therefore, naturally, these appear to me as real. Only less intelligent persons accept this perverted reflection of the spiritual world to be real. Those who are under the spell of the external energy accept this manifestation to be fact, whereas those who are advanced in spiritual realization know that it is illusion. Actual reality is elsewhere, in the spiritual world. But as far as I'm concerned, Sati said, I do not have much knowledge about self-realization. I am poor because I do not know the actual facts. I am attracted by my birthplace and want to see it. One who has attraction for his birthplace, for his body, and for other such items mentioned in the Bhagavatam is considered to be like an ass or a cow. Sati might have heard all this many times from her husband, Lord Shiva, but because she was a woman, Yoshit, she still hankered after the same material objects of affection. The word Yoshit means one who is enjoyed. Therefore, woman is called Yoshit. In spiritual advancement, association with Yoshit is always restricted, because if one is like a play doll in the hands of Yoshit, then all his spiritual advancement is at once stopped. It is said, those who are just like playthings in the hands of a woman, Yoshit Krida Mrigeshu, cannot make any advancement in spiritual realization. And just another note, that also can't satisfy the woman, because the woman doesn't want a man who's going to be a play doll in her hands. She wants a man who's a man. Is it true? I've got women in the... Is it true? Is it true? Is it true?
Of course.
There you go. Truth speaks. Translation. O never born, O blue-throated one, not only my relatives but also other women dressed in nice clothes and decorated with ornaments are going there with their husbands and friends. Just see how their flocks of white airplanes have made this entire sky very beautiful. Purport. Here Lord Shiva is addressed as Abhava, which means one who was never born, although generally he is known as Bhava, one who was born. Rudra, Lord Shiva, is actually born from between the eyes of Brahma, who is called Swayambhu, because he is not born of any human being or material creature, but is born directly from the lotus flower which grows from the abdomen of Vishnu. When Lord Shiva is addressed here as Abhava, this may be taken to mean one who has never felt material miseries. Sati wanted to impress upon her husband that even those who were not related to her father were also going, to say nothing of herself, who was intimately related with him. Lord Shiva is addressed here as blue-throated. Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison and kept it in his throat, not swallowing it or allowing it to go down to his stomach, and thus his throat became blue. Since then, he has been known as Nilakanta, or blue-throated. The reason that Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison was for others' benefit. When the ocean was churned by the demigods and the demons, the churning at first produced poison. So because the poisonous ocean might have affected others who were not so advanced, Lord Shiva drank all the ocean water. In other words, he could drink such a great amount of poison for others' benefit. And now, since his wife was personally requesting him to go to her father's house, even though he did not wish to give that permission, he should do so out of his great kindness. Text 13. Plot thickens. O best of the demigods, how can the body of a daughter remain undisturbed when she hears that some festive event is taking place in her father's house? Even though you may be considering that I have not been invited, there is no harm if one goes to the house of one's friend, husband, spiritual master, or father without invitation. Text 14. O immortal Shiva, please be kind towards me and fulfill my desire. You have accepted me as half your body. Therefore, please show kindness towards me and accept my request. Text 15. The great sage Maitreya said, Lord Shiva, the deliverer of the hill Kailas, having thus been addressed by his dear wife, replied smilingly, although at the same time he remembered the malicious, heart-piercing speeches delivered by Daksha before the guardians of the universal affairs. Purport. When Lord Shiva heard from his wife about Daksha, the psychological effect was that he immediately remembered the strong words spoken against him in the assembly of the guardians of the universe. And remembering those words, he was sorry at heart, although, to please his wife, he smiled. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that a liberated person is always in mental equilibrium in both the distress and the happiness of this material world. Therefore the question may now be raised, why a liberated personality like Shiva, like Lord Shiva, was so unhappy because of the words of Daksha? The answer is given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Lord Shiva is Atmarama, or situated in complete self-realization. But because he is the incarnation in charge of the material mode of ignorance, tamoguna, he is sometimes affected by the pleasure and pain of the material world. The difference between the pleasure and pain of this material world and that of the spiritual world is that in the spiritual world the effect is qualitatively absolute. Therefore, one may feel sorry in the absolute world, but the manifestation of so-called pain is always full of bliss. For instance, once Lord Krishna in his childhood was chastised by his mother Yashoda, and Lord Krishna cried. But although he shed tears from his eyes, this is not to be considered a reaction of the mode of ignorance, for the incident was full of transcendental pleasure. When Krishna was playing in so many ways Sometimes it appeared that he caused distress to the gopis, but actually such dealings were full of transcendental bliss. That is the difference between the material and spiritual worlds. The spiritual world, where everything is pure, is pervertedly reflected in this material world. Since everything in the spiritual world is absolute, in the spiritual varieties of apparent pleasure and pain, there is no perception other than eternal bliss. Whereas in the material world, because everything is contaminated by the modes of material nature, there are feelings of pleasure and pain. Therefore, because Lord Shiva, although a fully self-realized person, was in charge of the material mode of ignorance, he felt sorrow. Sanatana Goswami, in his Brihat Bhagavatamrita, gives a very nice example which can help us to understand how this is possible. That something that appears to be one thing is actually another. Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Bo, how are you?
Good.
How are you? Good, it's good to see you. Sanatana Goswami says that just as if you make ice cold enough, dry ice, it's very cold. And if you put it on your skin, it feels hot, like it's burning. And when you take it off, it leaves a burn, a red spot, like it was burned. So he says, the ice, although it's cold, feels hot. So like that, in the spiritual world, when something happens that apparently is emotional, causing emotional distress or something like that, actually internally the person is experiencing the highest bliss. And it seems counterintuitive, but it's just like that example. The ice is cold, but it feels hot. So therefore, unless one actually understands the science of spiritual life, then when we hear the descriptions, especially of Krishna and the Brajbasis, and all the things that go on, and the emotional exchanges and all these things, then we'll make a mistake, and we'll think that it's the same as the material world, because it looks like happiness and distress. But it's not. Okay, text 16. The great Lord replied, "My dear beautiful wife, you have said that one may go to a friend's house without being invited. And this is true, provided such a friend does not find fault with the guest because of bodily identification, and thereby become angry towards him." Purport. Lord Shiva could foresee that as soon as Sati reached her father's house, her father Daksha, being too puffed up because of bodily identification, would be angry at her presence, and although she was innocent and faultless, would be mercilessly angry towards her. Lord Shiva warned that since her father was too puffed up by his material possessions, he would be angry, and this would be intolerable for her. Therefore it was better that she not go. This fact was already experienced by Lord Shiva, because although Lord Shiva was faultless, Daksha had cursed him in so many harsh words. Text 17. Although the 6 qualities, education, austerity, wealth, beauty, youth, and heritage, are for the highly elevated, one who is proud of possessing them becomes blind, and thus he loses his good sense and cannot appreciate the glories of great personalities. Purport. It may be argued that since Daksha was very learned, wealthy, and austere, and had descended from a very exalted heritage, how could he be unnecessarily angry towards another? The answer is that when the qualities of good education, good parentage, beauty, and sufficient wealth are misplaced in a person who is puffed up by all these possessions, they produce a very bad result. Milk is very nice food, but when milk is touched by the envious serpent, it becomes poisonous. Similarly, material assets such as education, wealth, beauty, and good parentage are undoubtedly nice, but when they decorate persons of a malicious nature, then they act adversely. Another example given by Chanakya Pandit is that a serpent that has a jewel on its head is still fearful because it is a serpent. A serpent by nature is envious of other living entities, even though they be faultless. When a serpent bites another creature, it is not necessarily because the other creature is at fault. It is the habit of the serpent to bite innocent creatures. Similarly, although Daksha was qualified by many material assets, because he was proud of his possessions, because he was envious, all those qualities were polluted. It is sometimes therefore detrimental for a person advancing in spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness to possess such material assets. Kunti Devi, while offering prayers to Krishna, addressed him as a kinchana gochara, one who is easily approached by those who are bereft of all material acquisitions. Material exhaustion is an advancement for is an advantage. Material exhaustion is an advantage for advancement in Krishna consciousness. Although if one is conscious of his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can utilize one's material assets, such as great learning and beauty and exalted ancestry, for the service of a Lord. Then such assets become glorious. In other words, unless one is Krishna conscious, all his material possessions are zero. But when this zero is by the side of the Supreme One, it at once increases its value to 10. Unless situated by the side of the Supreme One, zero is always zero. One may add 100 zeros, but the value will still remain zero. Unless one's material assets are used in Krishna consciousness, they may play havoc and degrade the possessor. Text 18. One should not go to anyone's house, even on the consideration of his being a relative or a friend, when the man is disturbed in his mind and looks upon the guest with raised eyebrows and angry eyes. They call it the evil eye, right? That's what they call it in English. He gave me the evil eye. Purport. However low a person may be, he is never unkind to his children, wife, and nearest kin. Even a tiger is kind to its cubs. For within the animal kingdom, the cubs are treated very nicely. Since Sati was the daughter of Daksha, however cruel and contaminated he might be, naturally it was expected that he would receive her very nicely. But here it is indicated by the word anavastita, that such a person cannot be trusted. Tigers are very kind to their cubs, but it is also known that sometimes they eat them. Malicious persons should not be trusted because they are always unsteady. Thus Sati was advised not to go to her father's house, because to accept such a father as a relative and to go to his house without being properly invited was not suitable. Text 19. Lord Shiva continued, if one is hurt by the arrows of an enemy, one is not as aggrieved as when cut by the unkind words of a relative. For such grief continues to rend one's heart day and night. It's a very important verse, actually. Tita ribir na vedate shili mukai, sheter ditango ridayin duyata. swanam yata vakradiyam duduk dibir divanisham tap yatimarma taditaha. Beautiful verse. Lord Shiva continued, if one is hurt by the arrows of an enemy, one is not as aggrieved as when cut by the unkind words of a relative, for such grief continues to rend one's heart day and night. Purport. Sati might have concluded that she would take the risk of going to her father's house. And even if her father spoke unkindly against her, she would be tolerant, as a son sometimes tolerates the reproaches of his parents. But Lord Shiva reminded her that she would not be able to tolerate such unkind words, because natural psychology dictates that although one can suffer harm from an enemy and not mind so much because pain inflicted by an enemy is natural, when one is hurt by the strong words of a relative, one suffers the effects continually, day and night. And sometimes the injury becomes so intolerable that one commits suicide. I mean, this book is full of psychology and all necessary knowledge to act in this material world in a way to protect oneself and to help others protect themselves. Text 20. It is complete education. Text 20. My dear white-complexioned wife, it is clear that of the many daughters of Daksha, you are the pet. Yet you will not be honored at his house because of your being my wife. Rather, you will be sorry that you are connected with me. Purport. Lord Shiva put forward the argument that even if Sati proposed to go alone, without her husband, still she would not be received well because she was his wife. There was every chance of a catastrophe, even if she wanted to go alone. Therefore, Lord Shiva indirectly requested her not to go to her father's house. Text 21. One who was conducted by false ego and thus always distressed, both mentally and sensually, cannot tolerate the opulence of self-realized persons. Being unable to rise to the standard of self-realization, he envies such persons as much as demons envy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The real reason for the enmity between Lord Shiva and Lord Daksha is explained here. Daksha was envious of Lord Shiva because of Shiva's high position as an incarnation of equality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because Shiva was directly in contact with the Super Soul and was therefore honored and given a better sitting place than he, there were many... Daksha was envious of Lord Shiva because Shiva's high position as an incarnation of equality of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and because Shiva was directly in contact with the Super Soul and was therefore honored and given a better sitting place than he. There were many other reasons also. Daksha, being materially puffed up, could not tolerate the high position of Lord Shiva. So his anger at Lord Shiva's not standing up in his presence was only the final manifestation of his envy. Lord Shiva is always in meditation and always perceives the Super Soul, as expressed here by the words Purusha Buddhi Sakshinam. The position of one whose intelligence is always absorbed in meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very great and cannot be imitated by anyone, especially an ordinary person. When Daksha entered the arena of Yajna, Lord Shiva was in meditation and might not have seen Daksha enter. But Daksha took the opportunity to curse him because Daksha had maintained an envious attitude towards Lord Shiva for a long time. Those who are actually self-realized see every individual body as a temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his Paramatma feature, is residing in everybody, in everyone's body. When one offers respect to the body, it is not to the material body, but to the presence of the Supreme Lord. Thus, one who is always in meditation upon the Supreme Lord is always offering him obeisances. But since Daksha was not very elevated, he thought that obeisances were offered to the material body. And because Lord Shiva did not offer respect to his material body, Daksha became envious. Such persons, being unable to rise to the standard of self-realized souls like Lord Shiva, are always envious. The example given here is very suitable. Asuras, demons or atheists, are always envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They simply want to kill him. Even in this age, we find some so-called scholars commenting on Bhagavad Gita who are envious of Krishna. When Krishna says, "Man mana bhava mad bhakta," always think of me, become my devotee, and surrender unto me, the so-called scholars comment that it is not to Krishna that we have to surrender. That is envy. The asuras, or the atheists, the demons, without reason or cause, are envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, instead of offering respect to self-realized persons, foolish men who cannot approach the highest standard of self-realization are always envious, although there is no reason. Text 22. My dear young wife, certainly friends and relatives offer mutual greetings by standing up, welcoming one another, and offering obeisances. But those who are elevated to the transcendental platform, being intelligent, offer such respects to the Supersoul who is sitting within the body, not to the person who identifies with the body. Purport. It may be argued that since Daksha was the father-in-law of Lord Shiva, it was certainly the duty of Lord Shiva to offer him respect. In answer to that argument, it is explained that here, that when a learned person stands up or offers obeisances in welcome, he offers respect to the Supersoul who is sitting within everyone's heart. It is seen therefore among Vaishnavas that even when a disciple offers obeisances to a spiritual master, the spiritual master immediately returns the obeisances because they are mutually offered, not to the body, but to the Supersoul. This is a really important point. Thank you. Don't mind, I have to mark this. Therefore, the spiritual master also offers respect to the Supersoul situated in the body of the disciple. The Lord says in Srimad-Bhagavatam that offering respect to his devotee is more valuable than offering respect to him. Devotees do not identify with the body, so offering respect to a Vaishnava means offering respect to Vishnu. It is stated also that it is a matter of as a matter of etiquette, as soon as one sees a Vaishnava, one must immediately offer him respect, indicating the Supersoul sitting within. A Vaishnava sees the body as a temple of Vishnu. Since Lord Shiva had already offered respect to the Supersoul in Krishna consciousness, offering respect to Daksha, who identified with his body, was already performed. There was no need to offer respect to his body, for that is not directed by any Vedic injunction. Text 23. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Purport. The living entity is constitutionally pure. Asango yayam purusha. In the Vedic literature, it is said that the soul is always pure and uncontaminated by material attachment. The identification of the body with the soul is due to misunderstanding. As soon as one is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that one is in his pure, original, constitutional position. This state of existence is called Shuddha Sattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material qualities. Since this Shuddha Sattva existence is under the direct action of the internal potency, in this state the activities of material consciousness stop. For example, when iron is put into a fire, it becomes warm, and when red hot, although it is iron, it acts like fire. Similarly, when copper is surcharged with electricity, its action, as copper stops, it acts as electricity. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that anyone who engages in unadulterated devotional service to the Lord is at once elevated to the position of pure Brahman. Mam chayo vyabhicharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatit jaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. Therefore, Shuddha Sattva, as described in this verse, is the transcendental position, which is technically called Vasudeva. Vasudeva is also the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. This verse explains that the pure state is called Vasudeva because in that state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. To execute unadulterated devotional service, therefore, one must follow the rules and regulations of devotional service without desire to gain material profit by fruitive activities or mental speculation. In pure devotional service, one simply serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a matter of duty, without reason and without being impeded by material conditions. That is called Shuddha Sattva, or Vasudeva, because in that stage the Supreme Person, Krishna, is revealed in the heart of the devotee. Srila Jiva Goswami has nicely explained, has nicely described, Srila Jiva Goswami has very nicely described this Vasudeva, or Shuddha Sattva, in his Bhagavat Sandarbha. He explains that Ashtotara Shata, 108, is added to the name of the spiritual master to indicate one who is situated in Shuddha Sattva, or in the transcendental state of Vasudeva. The word Vasudeva is also used for other purposes. For example, Vasudeva also means one who is everywhere, or all-pervading. The sun is also called Vasudeva Shabditam. The word Vasudeva may be utilized for different purposes, but whatever purpose we adopt, Vasudeva means the all-pervading or localized Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 7:19, it is also stated, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Factual realization is to understand Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surrender unto Him. Vasudeva is the ground wherein Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed. When one is free from the contamination of material nature and is situated in pure Krishna consciousness, or in the Vasudeva state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person, is revealed. This state is also called Kaivalya, which means pure consciousness. Jnanam sat become kaivalyam. When one is situated in pure transcendental knowledge, one is situated in kaivalya. Therefore, Vasudeva also means kaivalya, a word which is generally used by impersonalists. Impersonal kaivalya is not the last stage of realization, but in Krishna consciousness kaivalya, when one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is successful. In that pure state, by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., because of the development of knowledge of the science of Krishna, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these activities are under the guidance of the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The action of the internal potency is described in this verse as apavrita, free from any covering. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His name, His form, His quality, His paraphernalia, so on, being transcendental, are beyond material nature. It is not possible to understand any of them with the materialistic senses. When the senses are purified by the discharge of pure devotional service, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchate, the pure senses can see Krishna without covering. Now one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existential body, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? The example is stated by Lord Chaitanya is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. In a clean mirror, one can see one's face very distinctly. Similarly, simply by cleansing the mirror of the mind, one can have a clear conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.8, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena, by executing one's prescribed duties in devotional service, Cetasa Nanya Gamina, or simply by hearing about God and chanting about Him. If one's mind is always engaged in chanting and hearing and is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed by Lord Chaitanya, by the bhakti yoga process, beginning from hearing and chanting. One can cleanse the heart and mind, and thus one can clearly see the face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva said that since his heart was always filled with the conception of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of the Supreme Lord's presence within his mind and heart, he was always offering obeisances unto that Supreme Godhead. In other words, Lord Shiva is always in trance, samadhi. This samadhi is not under the control of the devotee. It is under the control of Vasudeva, for the entire internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead acts under his order. Of course, the material energy also acts by his order, but his direct will is specifically executed through the spiritual energy. Thus, by his spiritual energy, he reveals himself. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.6, Sambhavam Yatmamayaya. Atmamayaya means internal potency. By his sweet will, he reveals himself by his internal potency, being satisfied by the transcendental loving service of the devotee. The devotee never commands, "My dear Lord, please come here so that I can see you." It is not the position of the devotee to command the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come before him or to dance before him. There are many so-called devotees who command the Lord to come before them dancing. The Lord, however, is not subject to anyone's command. But if he is satisfied by one's pure devotional activities, he reveals himself. Therefore, a meaningful word in this verse is adhokshaja, for it indicates that the activities of our material senses will fail to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by the attempt of one's speculative mind. But if one desires, he can subdue all the material activities of his senses. And the Lord, by manifesting his spiritual energy, can reveal himself to the pure devotee. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself to the pure devotee, the devotee has no other duty than to offer him respectful obeisances. The Absolute Truth reveals himself to the devotee in his form. He is not formless. Vasudeva is not formless, for it is stated in this verse that as soon as the Lord reveals himself, the devotee offers his obeisances. Obeisances are offered to a person, not to anything impersonal. One should not accept the Mayavad interpretation that Vasudeva is impersonal. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, prapadyate, one surrenders. One surrenders to a person, not to impersonal non-duality. Whenever there is a question of surrendering or offering obeisances, there must be an object of surrender or obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. What a purport. Huh? Every once in a while Prabhupada comes up with these purports that just describe everything. You don't even need the book, you just got that one purport, it explains everything. So I'm going to stop the reading now, and thank you for coming to see us. All those.
You're kicking me out already?
No, I was talking to her.
Okay, I was like, wow,
Uh-huh.
you were looking
Huh?
at me.
I was looking at her. Both of you. Okay. So let's have reflections. And anything that stuck out in your mind in the reading, yes, or Sunanda? Wait a second.
Sorry.
Somebody has to carry your mic.
So in the verse 22 purport about offering obeisances, I'm just trying to understand that part where Lord Siva, I understand that he was continuously offering obeisances in his meditation to the Supreme Lord, and therefore he didn't physically offer obeisances to Daksha. Is that what it means?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that Lord Shiva is not like us. He's not an ordinary Jiva soul. He's not Vishnu and he's not a Jiva. He's in between. He's unique. There's only one of Lord Shiva. There's many, many Jivas. All of us, unlimited numbers of Jivas. And there's many forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that have different personalities and different whatever. Lord Shiva, also has Rudra, he has expansions, but he's only one person. So he's different. You can't compare him and what he's seeing and what he's feeling and what he's doing to just an ordinary person. But the basic principle is that if a person is always meditating on Krishna in samadhi, then when he looks out at the world, he sees Krishna. Not necessarily that he sees the form of Krishna dancing around. He still sees the form, but he immediately remembers Krishna, and therefore he's always in a state of transcendental bliss. So therefore, when he looked at Daksha, even though Daksha was, doing what he was doing, he offered respect. And even when Daksha was mistreating him, he still didn't become disturbed. But later on, when Sati reminded him, then he thought of those words. But this is very subtle. It's not that a pure devotee on that level feels inimical towards the person when he has that kind of feeling. An ordinary person, as described in the purport, will feel the pinch and feel hurt when a relative or a dear one speaks very harsh words, even more so when an ordinary person or even an enemy speaks. But a person who's in samadhi feels bad when a person does that, because they know that that person is suffering as a result of being in that state of consciousness. Therefore, he's always seeing Krishna, even in that person who is saying those kinds of words. There's an example of that. This is a little esoteric, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote a book called Prem Samputa. It's a story about when Krishna wanted to test Radharani's love. So he approached her disguised as a goddess. Now when Krishna goes into a disguise, it's not like Halloween, where you just put on a costume and a mask and nobody can make it. No, his form actually changes completely. He has that. He's the supreme mystic yogi. So when he came in front of her, he had a form of the most beautiful goddess, and he's Krishna. So you imagine his form as a woman is like off the charts. The woman's body is most attractive in the material world. But when Krishna takes the form of a woman directly, that's off the charts. So Radharani was completely fascinated. Oh, you're so beautiful. Can I be your friend? And Krishna's like thinking, oh yeah, you can be my friend, no problem. But he was testing her, so he didn't say anything. He just stopped. He didn't talk. Or she didn't talk. What was the saying? Cat got your tongue? You can't. If somebody doesn't talk to you, you say something like, cat got your tongue? What's wrong with you, So anyway, she tried so many things, so many arguments to try to get her to talk, him to talk, her to talk. Anyway. So finally she said, yes, I'm a goddess. And I was in the heavenly planets, and I heard this sound, and I became very attracted and very curious what it was. So I came here, and I followed the sound all the way, and I saw this boy, Krishna, playing a flute. And then I followed the sound further, and I saw you, and you were crying. And then I went back and looked, and I saw Krishna was playing around with another girl. And I said, I've got to go warn her. So I've come to admonish you. Why are you attached to this debauchee, this playboy? He's just hurting you. He's making you suffer. And Radharani cut him off. He said, you don't understand anything, do you? And the Krishna's like, he's starting to get a little, his ecstasy is starting to grow, so he may not be able to keep his feminine form, he has to give up his disguise, And then she said, you don't understand anything, do you? I'm not crying because I'm suffering. I'm crying because I know that Krishna can't be happy without me, and he's suffering. When these other girls try to distract him from me, he's the one, he's suffering. Therefore, and by this, now Krishna's getting completely, ecstatic. But that's the idea. A devotee who seems to be suffering for one reason is completely different than in the material world. And of course, finally he said, and then finally she said, look, actually, unless you understand this, you can't understand what I'm saying. Krishna and I are the same soul. We're one soul in two bodies. By this time, Krishna has completely lost it again. He said, oh, you're one soul? Then you must be able to bring him whenever you want by meditation. And she said, yeah, I can do that. And she sat down immediately, and she went like this, and she went into meditation. Krishna lost it completely. He couldn't keep his goddess body. And she opened her eyes, and there's Krishna. And she said, oh, see? Well, where did she go? And Krishna said, "Oh, I don't know. I saw this person going this way." So like that, in the spiritual world, it's not always like it seems. When we have our, so-called affairs in this material world, and they end up in heartbreak, or even worse, some hideous, scene or another. But it's never like that in the spiritual world. Therefore, we want to go there. And we want to go there bad enough where tears will come from our eyes, that we want to be with Krishna so bad that we cannot stand another moment without him. Then he'll reveal himself to us. And at the time of death, we will immediately go to the spiritual world, instantaneously. Like the light comes from lightning, just like a flash, we go back to Godhead. It takes 1 instant to travel more miles than you can imagine. Yes, please.
So how would we take away from him to begin with? I don't know if it stretches that far. But so what was the whole purpose of evolution, this world, levels? Why did...
You said 2 things.
Mhm.
One thing you said was, why were you taken away from us?
Why were we taken away
Away
from
from
this?
him.
Yes.
Yes. And then you went on to say revolution,
Yeah.
It's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. It's a great question. This is a fantastic question. Can I answer it?
Of course.
So here's the thing. The vast majority of souls are in the spiritual world, and they never come here. There's only a few of us who come here. Just like now we're in Houston. So somewhere in Houston, there's a full security prison. And some persons are in that prison, Houstonians. And they're still in Houston. They're still in Houston. But they're not in Houston at the same time, because they have an extra set of laws on top of their laws that are the normal laws that Houstonians go for. So we're in the spiritual world right now, but we are being detained. The reason we are being detained is that we decided to come here. It's not that Krishna wants us to come here. We decide ourselves to come here. Now the reason for this is very deep. Ready for this? Ready? Oh, okay. You see, the soul is qualitatively the same as Krishna. We're conscious, he's conscious. We're eternal, he's eternal. We're pleasure seekers, he's pleasure seeker. But the difference is that we're very, very tiny compared to Krishna. He's infinite, and we're infinitesimal. So because we're a part of Krishna, we have very infinitesimal part of his qualities, one of which is independence. Krishna is supremely independent. Abhigya Swarat is described in the beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam. He's self-satisfied and completely independent. He doesn't need anything or anyone. When he wants something, all he has to do is think of it, and all these energies immediately try to arrange it. He doesn't have to lift a finger to do anything. But because we're tiny, we have a tendency to misuse that independence. That's the difference between us and God. The soul has the tendency to misuse the independence, because independence means that you have a choice to use your independence properly or not. Otherwise, there would be no freedom. Freedom couldn't exist. And therefore, love could not exist. Because you can't force another person to love you. So with that, by that misuse of independence, at some point in time, and we can't know when that was, because the spiritual world, there's no time and no space. At some point in time, we decided to come here, to try to enjoy like Krishna enjoys, but with him he can do it, with us we can't do it, but we try. And that's Krishna's kindness that he gives us this material world, to give us a chance to enjoy separately from him. This is the only thing that Krishna doesn't have. The love of a few of his parts and parcels.
When you say we, what do you mean? Who do you mean?
The soul, the individual souls.
So, we started off as we are part of Krishna, or we are part of.
Always small particles of Krishna.
So we're small particles of Krishna, but we decided to be independent because we are so much like Krishna.
Because we have a small degree of independence, and with that small degree of independence,
Mm-hmm.
we decide that we want to try to be to enjoy separate from Krishna, or enjoy like Krishna.
But then you said Krishna. Does Krishna suffer when we're not with him?
Yes.
So.
Not in the same way that we suffer,
Mm-hmm.
but he misses us.
Because
He
we're
wants
part of
us-
him.
It's the same that I just gave the story of Radharani and
Mm-hmm.
Krishna. It's the same principle. Krishna knows that we can't enjoy fully unless we're with him, because that's our constitutional position.
Mm-hmm.
We're servants of Krishna. That's our constitutional position. It's our nature. Until we are doing that, we can't feel constitutionally satisfied.
So was there a moment in time where, okay, actually the first question, are we the souls, like everyone here, did we all do it at once? Like, did we all say like, hey, like,
No, individually.
Individually, or?
Individually, at different moments, but we can't say when.
Mm-hmm.
We can't say when, because in the spiritual world there's no time.
So then there's some people or some souls that stayed.
Almost everyone.
So we were the few that left.
Yeah, we're the criminals.
Okay, so we're the criminals.
It's like in a society.
Basically.
Most people are like law-abiding citizens, and there's only a few that are going to be. But when they build a city,
Mm-hmm.
They provide a prison, because they know that some people are going to be criminals. It's just like that's the way it is as a nature.
So then, to my second question that I asked originally. So we left because we're criminals, or in a way we're criminals. We want to be independent.
Yeah.
Correct. So why is there all these, levels that we have? Or that it
There's
is.
bodies.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Except
different
bodies. Okay.
Yes. That's your next question.
I'm sorry, I have so
This is fantastic. I'm very happy by your questions, because they allow to explain the philosophy very clearly. So, this is very difficult to understand. You can't trace it back, okay? Because, like I said before, there's no time and space in the spiritual world. You can't trace it back. But what we do know is that the soul, it's possible that the soul is been here for more than one creation. Now, to put this into perspective, because to us it seems like such a big deal. There's so much suffering here, and sometimes seemingly innocent person are dying, and groups of people are dying all of a sudden and seemingly suffering like anything. But you have to put this into perspective to understand it and stay cool-headed about it. Because the whole duration of the cosmic manifestation is contained in the amount of time that it takes Mahavishnu, who's an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of Krishna, to breathe out and breathe in. When he breathes out, all the universes are created, and they go through all their transformations for 311 trillion years. Now, this is not imagination speaking. This is calculated according to the movements of the planets, movements of the sun and the stars. I'll go through that again because it's very difficult to understand. The amount of time that it takes us to go through millions and billions of births is one breath of Mahavishnu, who is an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of Krishna. So to Krishna, all the time we spend in this material world altogether is just like a blink of the eye. And when we go back to the spiritual world, it's like we woke up from a dream.
Do we remember that when we wake up? Like everything?
Why would you want to remember such a hellish thing?
No, not
When you have a nightmare, do you want to keep remembering it?
I think he's asking when you go back.
I know. I'm saying exactly that. I'm saying exactly that. When you have a nightmare and you wake up, do you want to remember it?
No, Maharaj. You know what
I know what he's saying. This is the nightmare. When he wakes up, I'm saying you can't remember either. You can't remember it. That's the nature. That's what keeps us forgetful. You want to control Krishna. That's why we're here. We want to be in control.
I just thought remembering it might make you want to not ever.
No, you didn't understand what he said. He's saying when you go back there, can you remember what you were when you were here? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
That's what he's asking.
I thought he was asking.
No.
whether you were there before.
No. When you have a nightmare, you don't want to remember the nightmare. That's Krishna's mercy. And we can't remember our previous lives, even though we've been here many times before, because if we did, we couldn't function in this lifetime, in this identity. We couldn't function. Yes, go ahead.
So whenever we do wake up there, though, we remember that it was a nightmare and that we never want to come back, right?
Maybe.
That's what keeps us up there.
We may remember, we may not remember, but we don't come back.
Okay, good.
Yad gatva nani vartante tad dhamma paramamama. No, you are here for a long time.
So I know, but when we go back, we don't come back, right?
No.
So then, but we left first.
Yes.
So we could leave.
Yes.
We left first.
You got it.
When we go back,
You
we
got
don't
it.
come back.
You got it. In other words, it's not that just because we've come here and found out what the mistake is and we go back, that we lose our independence. That independence is with us always, because otherwise love could not exist. Without free will, love could not exist.
If we don't make it back to Godhead until we're ready to go back and we develop God consciousness
Correct.
and we're ready to go back.
Yes.
We're already ready to go back. We're not all of a sudden we wake up in Godhead and like, oh, I didn't want to, let me go back.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Exactly.
Mommy, I want to go back to Earth. Or
No, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that we lose our independence when we're back in the spiritual world.
Yes.
The independence is there always. Therefore, the tendency to come back is there, but you never choose it. And sometimes we do choose it, but only because we want to serve and we want to help others in the material world. And then Krishna will send us. Then you can become a personality equal to Jesus Christ, because that's what he was. Srila Prabhupada, that's what he was.
What do they call people that are that? I know in
Shaktivesh Avatar. Shaktivesh Avatar. That means a living being who is empowered by Krishna to do something that only he can do. And with that, I'm stopping. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Thank you for your lovely questions. Nice. And so, all glories to Lord Shiva. All glories to Sati. And boo to Daksha. Gaur Premanandi, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hara. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same station. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.